Welcome. The trailer premiered last week for the new four-part docu-series being produced by The Rock, Danny Garcia, the creators of Dark Side of the Ring, and Vice TV, where it will premiere on June 4th, called Who Killed WCW? This is going to be a new series looking and charting the downfall of one of the world's biggest pro wrestling companies, World Championship Wrestling. We obviously kind of get a feel for what the series will be like from these types of trailers. And we can gather obviously a few bits of information from it, such as we know that we will hear in the series from the likes of Eric Bischoff, Diamond Dallas Page, Bill Goldberg, Bret Hart, Booker T, Kevin Nash, The Rock, Medusa, and crapstain Vince Russo. We can also see that this series will chart the downfall of WCW from its very peak, as in the trailer, certainly towards the end, the year 1997 was very much highlighted. That was absolutely the peak time of World Championship Wrestling. The New World Order were extremely popular. The ratings were about the highest they ever got to. They were leading the way in terms of beating WWE. There was a very powerful and very money-rich environment and entity at that point. So it certainly seems that this docu-series will take a look at the last 4.25 years of WCW. I kind of had the thinking that maybe it would be good for it to take a look at year by year. So we see the first episode 97, then 98, then 99, 2000, and that first quarter in the last episode. I doubt that it will work that way, but certainly it will cover those last 4.25 years of the company. I think the raw materials are there for it to be a potentially decent documentary. In the trailer, we do see some WWE owned WCW footage, which is understandable, especially considering the position that The Rock is in now. Even Vice's other program, Dark Side of the Ring, that uses WWE footage, and I'm sure there must be some kind of legal way they do that. Otherwise, WWE would come down on them in like a ton of bricks. I'm sure, but certainly it looks like we will see a tremendous amount of WCW footage, official footage in the show. I don't know we don't really have ever heard about how much WCW filmed anything behind the scenes. WWE seems to film pretty much everything, especially for the use of documentaries like this. This is not obviously a WWE thing, but for these types of documentaries at least, WCW, we'll never really get the full straight story about whether they really filmed a lot behind the scenes. I would love to see some of that footage be used if it actually exists. And I actually genuinely like to see a lot of that put on the network. So, the raw materials of this is potentially promising. Again, the list of guys like Booker T and Kevin Nash and Bret Hart and Goldberg and Bischoff and Russo and these guys that were in and around WCW during the whole time period of the company from the mid to late 1990s to 2001. Plus, again, in terms of those who are producing it, The Rock, the guys behind Dark Side of the Ring and all that, and the production wise, I think this will be a very well produced, well put together, and well presented 4-part documentary series. Now that I have no doubt about. I think it's definitely got the potential to be a decent kind of recap of the fall of WCW. That brings me to my own thoughts though, and personally, as for older fans like myself at least, I not really. As much as I can say it's going to be a well produced documentary, I can't really see it bringing up a whole lot of revelations and new information. Some of the talk on Twitter was being about this will kind of bring the whole thing to the forefront. I really can't see a lot of stuff 23 years on from WCW being bought out by WWE. I can't really see a lot of new information actually coming out from this because a lot of the story of WCW has been told in various different documentaries, people putting YouTube videos together. Even WWE have had like the rise and fall of WCW, which is on the network. They've got the two Attitude Era documentary things. They've got the standalone one for the Monday Night Wars, and then they've got the Monday Night Wars series from a few years ago now, where that had different episodes like Sting and the Undertaker and one ECW and the War Goes Extreme and looking at luchadors. There's I think it came out in two parts on DVD in a limited release. And I think there's been a lot of documentaries, books, and shoot interviews and spoken word tours, and a lot of talk about WCW and the Monday Night Wars over the past 23 years. And for me, one who liked WCW, I grew up watching WCW from the late 1980s through to the end of the company. I kind of gone and looked at a lot of that stuff, and so the story's a lot. It's basically the story's out there a lot. Pretty much it's all out there. There might be one or two stories from behind the scenes or stuff that we or I haven't heard before, but certainly a lot of the stories being talked about over the last 23 years. I think it may even been Billy Gunn that said a little while ago, that we talk so much about the Attitude Era that people should kind of move on and talk about something else. And I think I kind of get the feeling that's correct in many ways because the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, that whole mid to late 1990s going into the early 2000s, that's talked about a lot, covered a lot. There's podcasts about it again, YouTube channels that do videos about it. People literally sit and pick apart on podcasts, Nitro and Raw on the same night, and then the pay-per-views. It is covered ad nauseum and again. So I don't think, really, in terms of this, we will get a lot of new revelations and information, as I said, because a lot of the story has been out there over the years. Again, that said, the raw materials are there. I think it will be a well presented and well put together documentary. But for some people, I think it just may be covering a little bit of old ground. I'm not trying to kind of sound like a negative Nelly on this, because I think it will be a decent documentary. But I just think if people are really, really looking for absolute new information, new stories, I think they might end up being a little bit disappointed. And in terms of new information, I want to talk about the truth as well. Because that's something that I'm not too confident that we will really hear as well. Unfortunately, people, and this is just my own personal opinion, I don't think that some people involved in wrestling, particularly from, again, my own personal opinion, guys like Eric Bischoff or Vince Russo in particular, some of these guys will kind of put out their version of events, whether that's they want to show themselves in a good light, they want to shine light on their out their butts, they want people to think the sun shines out of their rear ends, that they're the heroes in their story, that they were really the ones trying to keep the company alive, and it should have gone under before, but I happened to be able to save the company for a few more months before the inevitable by WWE happened. There will be people that will try and paint themselves in a positive light during this. And there are also people with different loyalties, whether it be to themselves or whether it to be to WWE, like some Booker T. I've seen him change. I know it was a few years ago with these documentaries, but I've heard him say a couple of different documentaries. I think it's the standalone Monday Night Wars one, when they're talking about WWE buying the company, and I think Booker T says something like he never wanted to end his career without going to WWE, but then on another documentary thing that he states that he wanted to retire in WCW. And so some of these stories change depending on their moods, what exactly they're filming for, and all that. So I think the truth will be somewhere in the middle, and I think it'll be up to the viewers to really judge, because I think some of these stories, particularly with Russo and Bischoff considering their positions, they may contradict themselves. I also want to kind of highlight something that I saw on X or Twitter. Ric Flair's social media page saying how dare they kind of do a WCW series without Flair. The truth is there are so many individuals. I'm sure the budget probably couldn't stretch to Ric Flair, but there are so many individuals, from Charles Robinson to Sting to Flair to Arn Anderson to Tony Schiavone to likes of Raven to so Doug Dillinger to a loads and loads of people who were involved in WCW. They literally could have thousands of hours of interviews from various different, literally hundreds of people that were in WCW, and they could be interviewed about what went wrong and what happened in the company. I'm sure there had to be a cut-off point somewhere. I don't know who decided who to interview. Obviously, Nash is the NWO representative these days. There's a few kind of different people I would have selected, but whether they were available, like the Schiavone and Sting when this was being made. Sting was still under contract with AEW, whether he would be allowed to do this kind of thing because it's not WWE thing, I don't know. But there's so many people that you could really pick out. You click on Wikipedia and look at who was associated or involved with WCW over that time period, especially. There are just so many individuals that could have been interviewed, maybe should have been interviewed, but there are who is actually interviewed in the series is who is interviewed, and we have to judge the truth and what they say and everything this documentary says from what is said and what our opinion is and what we've heard in the past about the downfall of WCW over that 4.25 year period from 1997 onwards, which is where, as I said earlier, it seems like this documentary will focus. Something as well that is being pointed out on social media that I wanted to address, this other second point. Some people are kind of trying to hype this up or talk about it because obviously the title of this is Who Killed WCW? And some of the talk I've seen on social media has been that this will absolutely pin down the exact causes and kind of really suspects, I suppose you could term it, or people involved at least, that caused the end of World Championship Wrestling. I don't know whether this, obviously not having seen a single second of the documentary, and again I hope we are able to see it in the UK because we keep getting swindled out of these documentaries, seeing them properly. This isn't going to pin down an absolute person or an absolute event or an absolute series of events that caused the downfall and end of World Championship Wrestling. That's not the way that this story really is. It might point to it. Again, I've not seen it, so it might end up pointing to Vince Russo in the kitchen with his pencil and pad and his stupid decisions that ended WCW. There's not really the truth is, it's not there. It's not one single person. It's not one single Bash at the Beach 2000 promo that Vince did. Although I'm not a fan of Vince Russo at all, when I called him Crapstain earlier, because I just genuinely don't like him. Again, some people will take credit for stuff that went well and try to avoid blame for the stuff that didn't, and he's one of them. But it's a whole amalgamation. The truth is that if you can't really singly point out particular person X with implement in location Y for the cause of downfall of WCW. It was a whole cluster muck of stuff that happened. New talent not being brought through, mismanagement, not real management support, their management not being supported in WCW by likes of Time Warner, the parent company, plus management of WCW itself coming and going. Some of those who don't really know the professional wrestling industry, people getting the booker position, the creative leads, who either didn't get a chance to work out their vision, or again, maybe they sold themselves as a creative god when it ended up they were really apostles and Judas maybe at that. I wonder who I'm talking about there that I've just talked about. But there are a lot of wide reasons why WCW failed. So I think if people are going to go into this documentary series and think, oh, this is going to be nice, this is going to be like a detective at the end of a novel or a film where they'll gather all the suspects in one place and they're going to point out it was, again, person X with one implement in location Y. It's not going to be that way because it was such a clustermuck, such a gathering of stuff going wrong and people not being able to do the job that they wanted, that they were thought or sold themselves as being able to do, and just a whole variety of reasons why WCW failed. So if people think that this is going to pin down exact reasons and exact people to blame, it doesn't work that way when it comes to WCW. Like I said though, I think that this series will be a decent series. I think it's going to be one worth watching. I think it's certainly one for fans to mark down on their calendar. Again, June 4th. This kind of starting to sound like an advertisement, but June 4th on Vice TV. Again, hopefully we'll be able to see it in the UK. I absolutely think that it will be a decent documentary to watch. Again, I don't really see it being really new revelations and new information and all that kind of stuff personally, because it's been 23 years. A lot of the stuff has been talked about ad nauseum, again, from spoken word tours and documentaries and books and magazine interviews and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it's been talked about over the years, so I'm not absolutely sitting down and expect, no, this is going to be good and we're going to find out the real reasons why and who and what and exactly. It's not going to work out that way, but I do think that Who Killed WCW will be hopefully a decent production. It might be worth one worth people sitting there on their calendars to watch. I would be very interested in hearing the likes of the Jim Cornette Experience, Jim Cornette and Brian Last, and Busted Open Radio, and those kind of people, to hear their opinions and their thoughts on the episodes when they're airing. I'm sure some of them will surely cover it. I would love to see them actually cover it and talk about, even if it's just say the first and last episode. I would love to see people sit down and review it and talk about it and discuss it, especially those kind of people who are in the industry themselves, who have experienced WCW or similar companies. I would love for them to go through it and see what they think of it. But certainly, Who Killed WCW, it looks like it'll be a decent documentary series. Looking forward to seeing it. Again, I'm not expecting something brand new, something mind-blowing, but overall, I do still think this might very well be a decent documentary series to sit and watch. It's going to be it's not a great one, it's kind of like Titanic, that the ship is going to sink, but still one of my all-time favourite wrestling organisations. It's certainly one that I'll be checking out.